Hello, I'm Amy Grace Eden. I'm going to do a bit of a special video today that's hopefully going to cover quite a lot of ground. What I'd like to get to is to kind of give an overview of the now as I see it, and also talk about energy work and how useful that can be. It's really difficult to pitch these videos or these talks that I'm doing, because I realise more and more that each one of us is at a different level of our learning, our path, our knowing, and it's never the case that I'm teaching you. I'm just helping you to remember, but we're at different stages with that. So I've recently been fortunate to really expand my tribe and meet a lot of my soul family, and that's been hugely rewarding and so good for me, and good for all of us, to be connecting and meeting minds and meeting hearts. And there is this kind of common thread that runs through this particular group of people, of them all being very open-hearted, open-minded people. But they are the spectrum of all human life, and some people are still in a stage where they're quite angry, which is totally valid, totally just, totally necessary, and very important energy to work through. There's other people who feel quite defeated and tired and worn out, because we have been battling, for want of a better word, with ourselves essentially for many lifetimes, not just this one. And I think we could agree that for most people, life on earth, even before current big world events with disease and all that, wasn't good. A lot of people, I think loneliness was the pandemic even before this all happened, and I'm glad to feel and know that that's coming to an end now. So yeah, just to give a bit of context, my beliefs, and as always, you don't have to follow on with anything that I say. Let it wash over you. Set your filters to discard any bullshit that you detect or anything that doesn't sit well with you. But just keep an open mind and open heart, and then whatever's needed from this particular transmission is sure to find the right home. So the context, as many people within the spiritual community and even the truther community they're all the same, but let's just define things broadly in those terms. People in the spiritual community, in inverted commas, were aware that last spring was going to be an incredibly important transitionary period. It was going to be the beginning of something big. And so it was, so it came to pass. I think what a lot of people, and me included, weren't prepared for was how long that this particular cycle would go on. But essentially what we're going through is a death and a rebirth. So we're moving from a 3D reality into a 5D reality. So, and to do that, we have to burn away the old. So this is essentially an energetic purge and a breaking down of all the control structures and systems that have been in place that have very much put a cap on our creative abilities. But it's literally World War III, and it's a war of the consciousness. A war is being fought between light and dark, if you want to see it in those terms, for control. And it's not that my beliefs is that the dark, yes, there are dark controllers, there are nefarious sources definitely here on the planet, and there are beings who have held on to knowledge that should be our knowledge and have siphoned our energy and depleted our bodies, our DNA, and damaged us and traumatized us in a great many ways. But they're still part of the collective. ultimately. They're still part of our soul group, and they in a sense have been the catalyst for great progression for the masses. So I'm not giving them on any undue kudos, but it's helpful to think about them in those terms, that if they were not there to create all these distortions and all this mess and chaos, then what would we have to work with? What would be our journey? And is there not some value in us firewalking together so that we can truly embody our sovereign selves? Because I don't think without this big catalyst we would have been as far along the path as we all are now. So, but that isn't me excusing anything that they've done. I certainly do think that a lot of the things that happen in this reality are incredibly disturbing, and it's good that they're coming to an end. And the good news is that their old trickery won't work in the new consciousness, in 5D, and this is why they're pulling out all the stops. They are literally scrambling around behind the scenes, as I see it, and trying to throw any old red herring they can into the fire to hope that it readjusts the timeline to the one that they want, to their narrative. And it's just not working. And my personal knowing is that actually the battle, again in inverted commas, has already been won. We've already reached critical mass. And all we're doing now, essentially, is kind of playing out the money left on the machine. It's us just going through the motions. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't still be attending to due diligence. We shouldn't still be moving in the direction of the energy that we want to bring in. We shouldn't not be banding together in the ways that we are in small groups as it stands. Because we still, it's no good to, well, there may be some value in it, is complete submission, but for me personally as a soul, there's no good to me sitting here in my office doing all the energy work that I can, which I do anyway, but doing all that but not having the 3D experience of interacting with the chaos and trying to help to find order within that. So, I think thinking about what the jab is, I'm trying to be quite careful about how I word this so that I don't get censored. That may happen. What the jab is it's designed to prevent the awakening. So, and it all plays to the same narrative. If you think about the Great Awakening, and then a virus, the true virus on Earth now is not a negative thing. It is the awakening. It is this sharing of information that we're doing and the passing on of knowledge. And it's going now. This is the quickening. It's going like wildfire across the globe. And it's that's the virus that they're trying to stop with the jab. So I believe that the effect of that would be to cut us off from source, so we would stop being able to tune into our inner knowing and act accordingly, and we would constantly, rather than looking within for God's source, we would constantly be looking for it in the external, which would be some form of control, right? So it would mean that we would gladly and willingly give over our sovereignty. I think it's important to remember that we're all fractals and all part of the bigger jigsaw, and I'm certainly in the people that I've met recently, my experience is that I can see how each one of these people fits into creating a beautiful jigsaw in their own right. Like it's like everyone's learning everyone's path, has given them some specific skills or specific energy that makes them different to everything else that's already existing there, and so their energy comes in to fill that void and brings more harmony to the group, so the whole is enriched by the individual. And I'm loving it. I'm really, really enjoying it, and I do realise that within that everybody's fighting, again, for want of a better word, everyone's working through this at their own level. So it doesn't really matter whether somebody is spiritually awakened or just awakened to the control structure of the government, if they know about satanic stuff, if they know about the control and manipulation in the media. Everyone's energy is still perfectly on time and so in balance with what's needed for the now. But it is all breaking down. Everything is breaking down, and I think it's important to try to find ways to move out of the fear of that and to let go, because the encouragement from Source is very, very strongly to let go of all attachment, because the attachments that we have to this world are what's anchoring us in this old energy still and preventing us from moving on. So, I mean, they've hijacked a timeline. They've hijacked the natural timeline, or they're trying to, and they try to do things that are energetically similar to the organic timeline in order to make it an easier match so they can siphon the energy from it. So terms like the Great Reset, it is they've turned it into something negative, but actually it's not incorrect. We are going through a reset. We are ascending into a new paradigm, a new earth. And in order to do that, we have to break down all the old structures that are no longer serving us. I think in thinking about how we use our energy in the now, we have to have some understanding of how powerful we are as individuals and as a greater collective, and how we've been used and manipulated as essentially a food source for the darker factions of society. So we are, as we remain without the jab, connected to Source, and Source energy flows through us, and we can, with some training, with very, very minimal training, and many people without any at all, direct that energy to change or influence our environment around us, and certainly to manifest the things that we place our attention onto. And because we're capable of that, controlling our consciousness in the ways that it has been done through media means that we've been literally herded like sheep in the past to graze in certain areas and give our attention to certain things so that it can be manifest in the world. They, in inverted commas again, the 1%, the dark controllers, they don't have those capabilities. And it's really important to understand this structure, this puppet master kind of archetype that they've used to control us, because with an understanding of that comes an understanding of how powerful we truly are and what capabilities and gifts we have that have been hidden from us. So they, through having completed the Lucifer experiment, which was way, way, way back, we're now, I can't remember if I mentioned the precession of the equinox, but we're at the end of a 26,000 year cycle now, and we are going on an upward tilt into the golden age, and so literally coming out of the shadows and into the light, and we're moving into an age of enlightenment as a species, which is super good, super happy about that. But the smoke and mirrors and what sustained the 3D reality has been their ability to control our consciousness and guide it. And they're getting much heavier handed with that now, with bringing out the jab, because they're realizing that they can no longer contain our consciousness. it's time, it's the end of the evolutionary period, we're due for an uptilt. They can't stop it, so they're bringing in these very 3D manipulative ways to control us through attacking our physical beings. But yeah, because of them pissing about with the Lucifer experiment and creating this grand experiment of theirs, which has been an absolute fustercluck, they denied God and saw themselves as God. So in doing so, they became pretty much all ego, and they cut off their divine creative power. So the only way that they can then manifest in this reality is to use us. If you can grasp that, then you have to take away an understanding that you yourself are a master magician, and you are capable of influencing the wider reality and certainly your own being. So I'd like to talk a little bit how to do that. Just looking through my notes. Oh yeah, so just before we get onto the energy stuff, I did want to say that obviously everything that's happening now is so relatable to the Matrix film, isn't it? It's just incredible, the parallels that can be drawn from that. I do think there's some dark manipulation in that particular film because of the AI presence. I don't think AI is part of the organic timeline. I think that's an ultimate manipulation. But the lessons that are within there's some really deep spiritual truths within it, and I think it's an important parallel in there to consider that some people can awaken within a lifetime and some cannot or do not want to. And I think that's to do with us having made our soul agreements before we came into this life and deciding what specific lessons we would go through, what learning was necessary. And sometimes, and all of us will have, sometimes it's necessary to play with the dark so that we can learn more about it. That can be really valuable for a soul. So a lot of the people that are around us, that many of us now are trying to wake up from an incredibly loving and giving place, cannot. It's, I think, impossible for them, and actually quite abusive to persist in trying in some instances. So just bear that in mind if you have a friend, a family member, somebody that you really want to be able to share these things with and hope to wake up, that it is possible that it's just not for them in this lifetime. But if we can get to a point where we understand that we are eternal souls having a temporary experience here, then death isn't nice for us in the 3D, but the person that dies, well, there's no real death. You know, they're going to get to where they need to get to ultimately and eventually. It's all kind of trial and error as we work through our life cycles. So that said, those of us that are awake are being guided now to take off our training wheels and become conscious creators, rather than letting the monkey in our head run riot or being influenced by the control structure that's been. And the mind really is a garden, and one that needs careful tending. And I have spent quite a few years working on the monkey chatter within my own head and that negative voice that was seemingly implanted, telling me that I was no good and I couldn't do and I couldn't have and I couldn't be. That's really old energy. It's time for us now to grasp the reins and start to drive this ship for ourselves. I think there is some inherent value in everything that we're going through. There's certainly a value in fear. There's kind of, I'm thinking about it like there's two kinds of fear now. So there's the negative one, which pulls me on a downward spiral and sinks my ship, and that's the one that I need to grab hold of and redirect and consciously think about and understand and heal. And then there's another kind of fear that is a motivating force, and it's almost like, it's more like misplaced excitement, I think. And that's the fear I think that we need to, as individuals and as a collective, be embracing now. So starting to look for those opportunities, for the things that scare us a little bit, but we know are in the highest and greatest good of ourselves, the collective, and go do them. So whether that be having an awkward conversation with your neighbour about what you think about the jab, or going maskless in any and all situations, or going out leafleting, or whatever you can think of, any action that you can take right now that comes from a loving place and is aimed at enlightening others and sharing information is definitely a good one. And if you feel drawn to do that, but a little bit like butterflies in your tummy about it, then it's definitely something you should try. So, on to energy work then. It's a hard leap to make, I think, to believe truly and wholly in the magic that's around us and the magic that creates this environment. But from my experience, it's there, and we do have an influence over it. So I think a lot about the power of words, and this is one way that I complete energy work here. And I'm telling you all this, or I'm going to tell you all this about energy work, in the hopes that it may further your practice. So if you're at the stage where you're woke, but you're just becoming interested in spiritual topics, or you have some spiritual inclination, then maybe you might consider adding this to the list of activism that you're already involved in. But words are incredibly powerful, as is the tone of our voice. We all have different codes that we can pass on to one another subconsciously just through the vibration that's within our voices. And words too are vibrations, so everything in this physical 3D reality is energy and mass, right? And the energy is vibration. So you must have seen some of the cymatics, or maybe you haven't, but maybe look up cymatic experiments to get an example and a feel for this. And that's where different tones, different resonant frequencies are played on a speaker with sand on the top of it. And different tones will create different patterns within the sand. So some of them might be beautiful fractal patterns, but they're always symmetrical, they're always repeatable and extendable, and it's quite cool. But if we think about that as sort of a fundamental way to see how sound impacts on material things, then we can understand why it is that spellcasting works, and why it is that wounds can be felt on the soul when someone speaks unkindly to us. It's because words really are powerful weapons and powerful tools of manifestation. And we, as sovereign beings, heart-centered beings of the light path, have a responsibility to mind our words and to use them consciously. I'm not always the best person at this. I am not a guru. I'm not enlightened. I'm on the path very much the same as you. And I sometimes still speak badly. I still get pissed off in my car, and I call people dickheads, and I get angry at SPAC hand job, and that's coded. For those of you in the UK, you'll know who I mean. And that dickhead who's in Westminster with the blonde hair, you know, the dude. And I rant and I get irritated at stupid stuff like putting out the washing, and, you know, we're human. And I think this isn't about denying, the ascension process isn't about denying our humanity. It's about embracing it and working with it. But words, certainly, to bring me back to where I was, words have power. They carry weight. And those of you that are now learning about common law will very much understand this, that the way in which we communicate ourselves and the way in which we communicate the world around us is very, very important. So as much as we may have claimed our own divine rights to sovereignty, I think it's important to go through a process of doing some real spell casting and saying this out loud into the universe with intention from your heart. So I would say, and I have got other videos on this, but I would say something along the lines of, I claim myself as a sovereign being. I end all contracts that are not in my highest and greatest good. I return to sender any negative energies or spells that have been cast against me. And so it is. I am that I am. Something like that. But it's got to be personal to you. So, you know, just go with it. You can't really say the wrong thing, so long as your intention is pure. The older that words are, the more energy that they carry. If you think about it like an echo going backwards. So that's why things like the Lord's Prayer, not that I'm a fan of that, I think there's faults to it, but parts of it nice. But things like, forgive me my trespasses as I forgive those who trespass against me, is I like that line. That's nice. That's all about forgiveness. Forgive me my trespasses as I forgive those who trespass against me. That's spell casting. And it brings, by using words that are old, it brings all the energy with it. I think possibly the Lord's Prayer is not the best example because many people will have said that out of fear. But what about more jubilant phrases like holy, holy, holy? There's some good, loving energy in that phrase. So part of your energy work is to think about the words that you use, to be conscious of how words impact the world around you, and be conscious of how the words that you say to yourself impact you. If you have the monkey chatter mind and the Zion stuff going on still, where you're being very negative about yourself and very punitive and very shaming, try to do some healing around that. Try to follow those breadcrumbs back to where they began and see if there's something there for you to heal, because again, that's old energy and it's not serving us anymore, and it's time to cast off that shit. We don't need it, and step forth into something better. So that's the power of words. The power of the mind is also involved in that, and that's important. The power above all of this, of course, is the power of the heart. But in terms of thought processes, I don't know that I can teach the power of the heart. I think that's just something that's inherent that you already know, and you don't really need direction in. But that is the biggest power that's available to us, is to link our heart to our mind. Actually, it should be a three-way link to the gut, the mind and the heart, and have these three systems working in tandem. That's an aligned being who can speak authentically and speak truth and love and have it manifest in the world around them. But the power of the mind, I've written a few notes down for this, so I thought this phrase was particularly helpful for expressing how thoughts create and what's needed to use your thoughts to create in this reality. So the phrase is, you have to want it and believe it for it to manifest. and you have to be ready to lose everything in order to gain all. So that's a bit like Neo in the Matrix again, isn't it? There's that first bit in the film where he tries to take the leap and he fails, and we all do. That's like so analogous for this kind of work. We think, yeah, I'll have a go at that, and it doesn't quite work out. But then by the time he's gone through his initiation, which is what we've all been through being here on planet Earth, by the time he's gone through his initiation period and he tries the leap again, he makes it the second time. And it's because he believes that he can do it. It's like the spoon bending bit. I remember that being quite mind-opening for me when I first watched that film. The kid says to him, it's something like, it's not the spoon that needs to bend, it's your mind. And that's exactly what this kind of work is. So you have to have faith that the things that you're thinking about and hoping to manifest could manifest, and hold to a place of knowing but still moving forward in the ways that feel right for you, regardless of what your knowing is. So my knowing is that this is already a done deal. We've already got it in the bag. We've already won. But we've still got to play through the motions. And it's important to know that your brain doesn't know the difference between thinking something and doing it. So what we expect to get is what we'll get, ultimately. And as we move into 5G energies, 5D energies, although it's interesting that they've used that's another hijack, 5G, 5D. They're trying to make 5D seem like something nefarious and to be avoided, but it's not. 5G is, 5D isn't. But in 5D there's no lag in manifestation, so when we're there we would be able to think about a pyramid and manifest a pyramid. Here in 3D there's a lag, so it may be that we have to think about something as a collective and have a shared manifestation for it to energetically be created here in this reality, or it just takes a little bit longer, like I've been, one of my manifestations, one of my big successful manifestations is to find soul family, to find my tribe here. But I've been asking for that for God knows how long, been pleading the universe, where's my tribe, and it was only when I let go of holding on to that need so tightly and kind of relax into myself that my tribe was able to manifest. So there's a way in which we block ourselves, we create resistance within ourselves by desiring something too much. So you don't have to do anything. Ideally, we believe that something is already manifest, and then we just let it go and let it happen. I think so. That's thinking about. So we've talked about words, we've talked about the power of the mind. I do want to go on to visualization and how we use that to control energy. But first, there's something that I've written in my notes here about the layers of law and how interesting that's all been to me, and it all feels like it segments quite nicely into this. So we have people, or we've been governed by, but we've been under maritime law in the UK for a long time. And common law actually supersedes maritime law, but maritime law is what's used by our systems here. So people now are very much reverting to using common law, which has principles regarding causing no harm to other people, not damaging anyone's property, and all else being equal, and us being sovereign beings of flesh and blood. Above that, there's also a natural law, and then there's universal law, and then the law of one above that, which is what we're currently being encouraged to use. And the law of one very much embodies the law of karma, so understanding how what we do influences the world around us and actually echoes back to the self. It's also about understanding free will versus destiny. So we all have free will to decide, but we do have certain contractual agreements that we've made within our lifetimes, and there'll be nodal points through which we have to pass. So it's kind of like this paradox that we do have free will, but there's certain experiences that we're still going to experience no matter what we decide. And it's also a bigger understanding that there is no separation. All are one, and that love is the highest law above all. So there's no separation, ultimately, and that's hard to fathom when we're talking about things like the deep state. But it is true that we're all part of the same energetic source. We all came from the same place. We'll all return to the same place, and we're all connected in a very psychically intuitive way as a web of humanity. So, yeah, I think it's interesting to think about the dimensions of law. And I went off path a little bit there, so I'm going to go back to energy work and how we might use that. So, okay, energy work and manifestation. So we've talked about how to claim the sovereign self, how to realise the self as a creator, how to navigate some of the difficult thoughts or maybe some of the things that you do about those, and I'm more than happy to talk about shadow work and self-healing and different practices that you can take on if that's of interest to anyone. But what I also want to cover is more about how we can direct our energy and how we can preserve our individual energy as sovereign beings. And it's very much by visualization, and it's that thing again, you've got to believe it before you can see it. So it's an act of faith to go through these processes, and I can't speak for anyone else, but speaking for myself, doing this kind of work has been hugely rewarding and has transformed the way that I think about life and think about myself and the bigger picture of things. So it's been a really powerful practice, and I hope that you would at least try it or consider it. But energy work for me is it's as broad as you want to make it. There really isn't a right or a wrong way to do this. For me, my morning routine, part of that includes an energy cleanse for the planet. So, which sounds big and lofty, doesn't it? But it's true. That's what I do every day because I'm a superhero. But yeah, I do. So in the morning, I'll sit and I will close my eyes, take some deep breaths, relax my body. I imagine that I'm grounded to earth, so I have tree roots coming out through my feet that go into Earth's center and ground me here so that I can be connected to that energy. And then I connect to the heavens through the crown chakra. And I imagine white light coming all the way down and the energy then coming up from Earth, and those two energies meet within my heart center. I gather them there, I can feel it. It feels nice and warm. I see the radiating light, and then when it feels like it's built up enough energy, I send it out in a burst, and I imagine it coating the whole of the Earth, and that's my energetic cleanse for the Earth. So there's that. I bless people, pretty much everyone I see. I imagine a little pink light emanating from my chest and going over to them and just blessing them. And I say the words in my head or out loud: bless you, bless you, bless you. And this links very much to the work of Masaru Emoto, who did some water experiments and proved that our intention can change the crystalline structure of water. So if we speak words of love to a glass of water and then freeze it, it will form these beautiful crystalline snowflake structures. If we speak words of hate, anger, then the crystals don't form, and it remains this chaotic, ugly, unformed thing that makes no sense. So again, going back to our words matter. So this is spell casting and energy work paired together. I also shield myself, and I shield myself when I sleep as well. So I use that same process of imagining the connection to earth and the connection to heaven, meeting them in my heart center, and then bursting out a shield that's a protective shield that guards my energy. And I give it instructions, because this is my manifestation. So I'll tell the shield, the shield permits anything that's in my highest and greatest good to filter through, but it deflects anything that will not serve me, and it protects me in that way. And this is like, like if you're going out on protest and you're going to have interactions with the police, or you're doing any kind of protest where you're feeling a bit worried, this is part of your sovereign practice to maintain and claim and hold your energy as a light worker here. So that's very powerful. What else do I do? I bless people. The violet flame. Yeah, so I use the violet flame a lot for specific areas on earth that I feel need some healing. And you can roll them off the top of your head where they'd be, but anywhere there's been a centre of darkness. The Vatican is a big one. Westminster, big one. Buckingham Palace, like pretty much any of our government buildings where there's been dark and nefarious things occurring for eons. And I'll see that place in my mind, and I send a violet flame to heal the energy there and to cleanse it. So laughing is also energy work. I make sure that I spend time watching things that I find funny every day. I sing songs to myself that are really ridiculous. I laugh at stupid thoughts that crop up in my head, and I do believe we can literally laugh the hell out of each other. Laughter is such a high vibration. If you find something really funny, that's such a great place to be. So part of your energy work could be to try to be a little lighter in the world and to tell more jokes and try and get into more exchanges with people, like even if you're shopping, just being a bit silly and charismatic, I suppose. I also take time to blow away anything that no longer serves me. So moons are particularly powerful. The new moon is when we set our intentions. So we decide what it is that we'd like to accomplish within the next month and give energy to that. And the full moon is a time for letting go. So that's when we let go of all that no longer serves us. But you don't have to do it specifically at that time. It can be any time. So I'll also sit in the evening before I go to bed, and I'll take time to do the same connection to earth, to heaven, and then the white light comes out, but this time it's blowing away anything that no longer serves me. So clearing away all that dead wood and allowing it to be recycled. If I ever get into a nasty interaction with anyone, or if I'm ever in a place of fear, I take time to return to sender anything that's not of me and call and claim my own energy to me, because we can be very fractured energetically in this way by having a fearful conversation here, a negative interaction here, swearing in the car there. So we need to make sure that we reclaim our energy and call it to ourselves. I'm just looking through my notes. I think that was really long. That's like 44 minutes already. Oh my gosh. I wanted to be concise, but the whole everything that's happening now is so complicated, and there's been so much that's just been hidden from us and downright lied about, that my uncovering all this stuff. I feel like an archaeologist, and I'm sure we all do, but an archaeologist of the self, and the stuff that I'm finding out is just wild, and I'm sure the same is true for you. But the topics, every time I open another box, find another key for something, the topics just expand and get bigger, and it's very difficult then to condense them down into something that's easy to digest, much though I'm trying. And I very much look forward to the time when we've awoken our gifts and we can communicate psychically, and I can I could just say, or I wouldn't even need to say, would I? I'd just go and just send you all this information in thought form, and you'd just be able to comprehend it internally, and that would be wonderful. But until then, we're limited by speech. But it's a tool, isn't it? It's something we can use, as we've talked about in here. So closing thoughts. I hope this has been helpful. I felt that there's a lot of context that I'd missed from this channel about the bigger picture of things and what the now all means, and also how we might work with the energies on an energetic level. So I'm really hopeful this has been useful to some of you, one of you, any of you, and even if it hasn't and you've stayed with me this long, I'm very grateful for you listening and for being open-minded and open-hearted enough to stay the course. So love and light, I love you much, and send eons of blessings your way. Peace out.